Hello again. It is necessary to learn proper pronunciation. If you are learning English as a second language or a foreign language, it is very important to have proper pronunciation, understandable pronunciation, comprehensible pronunciation to make your English intelligible for everyone around you. But it is very difficult for my students sometimes. They ask me which English is to be followed. Since there are different Englishes and people talk about native varieties and non-native varieties, and I often get the question from my students, which English is to be followed, which pronunciation is to be followed. Okay, there is no doubt one has to have proper pronunciation, understandable pronunciation, but which pronunciation has become a very confusing for the students. Particularly my students, I often get this question. They ask me which English is the best one. Even though there are different varieties of English, even though people have different accent, if you are learning English language, you have to make your pronunciation or accent comprehensible to everyone. Long ago, people used to talk about RP, received pronunciation. It means mostly BBC does, right? The speakers or news readers, they have this RP English, BBC English, and there was, of course, there was the dominance of British English in the beginning, but later on we could see some American, English dominance there in different textbooks or around the world. Currently, people are not that much, focused to learn American English or British English or Australian English. They have their own accent. They focus on their pronunciation. They may have their own English, according to their culture. Their English, the English that they speak, may be influenced by their cultural, aspects in their country. They are, not particularly focused on learning this variety or that variety. But as a student or as a teacher, you should have a good pronunciation so that people understand you. If you don't have proper pronunciation, if people don't understand you, if your pronunciation is terrible, people, they don't understand you. Therefore, today I want to share some of the ideas on pronunciation learning or pronunciation teaching for the teachers, right? I will take some ideas from different scholars, those who have worked on English phonology, phonetics and phonology particularly. These ideas I will share here. So before we start, which pronunciation is not the big deal. The pronunciation that you have is okay, but how you evaluate yourself is whether the English or the accent that you speak, people understand you or not. This is how you evaluate. The majority of people have to understand you. Your English, how you evaluate your English accent is whether people understand you or not. For that you need to practice some English sounds in the beginning. In English language, we have two kinds of sounds. Number one is vowel sounds. Number two, consonant sounds. And this is how I learned English pronunciation in the beginning. G.D. O'Connor, he has written one book on English phonology particularly, and his book's name is Better English Pronunciation. Okay, and what he says about English language, pronunciation learning for the learners, it is easier if you go through this book. He says that what sort of accent you have, your accent must be understandable. Okay, so how can you make your pronunciation better? Is the only way to practice the vowels and consonant sounds in English language. So there are two very good books. Number one, I have already mentioned here by G.D. O'Connor, better English pronunciation. And I've got another book here, English Phonetics and Phonology by Peter Rhodes. And this book is also a very important book where you can find different English vowels and English consonant sounds and their use. How can you use organs of speech? For example, your tongue, teeth, leaf, your vocal cords here, and some other organs of speech which are directly involved to produce the sounds. For example, when you are producing or speaking the word student, right? S-T-U-D-E-N-T. So how to produce this word, you should have proper knowledge of the consonants and vowels that are used in this word. And these vowels and consonants, how do we produce, and which part of our organs of speech is involved in to produce a particular sound, you can get in these two books. Okay, number one this, and number two this one. So here you can get different pictures and the different techniques to produce different sounds. So here my point here is, if you know how to produce a particular vowel sound and the consonant sounds in English language, it will be easier for you to produce correct English, or to make your English understandable for everyone around you. Yes, in these two books there are different techniques that you can follow to improve your pronunciation. The only way to improve your pronunciation in the beginning is to learn vowels and consonant sounds. There are 20 vowels in English language and 24 consonant sounds. And altogether there are 44 sounds. If you can produce these 44 sounds in English language, it will be easier for you to consult dictionary and to have proper knowledge of pronunciation. You don't have to worry about which varieties to be followed. Either American or British, whichever variety you learn, there are more similarities among the English languages around the world than the differences. Therefore, basic thing that you have to do to learn pronunciation is to follow and to learn about the sounds. As I already mentioned, there are different vowel sounds and consonant sounds, and there are different easy books, and these two books that I have already mentioned by G.D. O'Connor and Peter Rhodes are very simple books that you can follow to make your pronunciation understandable. Yes, people talk about different varieties. They say sometimes they talk about Indian English, they talk about American English, British English, or Chinese English, right? Maybe people might have different issues to discuss about pronunciation or different varieties of English, but it is very necessary for everyone to start with the basic thing that is needed for improving English language pronunciation. That is learning the basic vowels and consonant sounds in English language. I'm not saying we don't have to learn different varieties of English. If possible, we have to learn the different varieties of English later on, once you get the basic knowledge of pronunciation. For example, once you learn vowels and consonant sounds, then you will have proper knowledge, basic foundation for differentiating other varieties of English, how Indian English is different from American English in terms of accent or pronunciation or selection of vocabulary or grammar. But the very first thing that everyone has to do is to learn the basic thing, that is vowels and consonant sounds and their pronunciation and production, and which part of our organs of speech is involved to produce a particular sound. And there are different techniques which are given in these two books. If you can practice these sounds in the beginning, then only you can go for different varieties of pronunciation, different varieties of accent, different Englishes. This will be easier. But in the beginning, a learner doesn't have to get confused with different varieties of Englishes. We have to learn the foundation first, then only we can go for learning other varieties. This is very necessary. So if you don't have proper pronunciation, it will be very difficult for people to understand you. Not only for the people, but the speaker. If the speaker doesn't have proper pronunciation, he or she gets humiliated. If people say, say it again, what are you saying? Can you repeat it? It becomes a sort of humiliation, or people get demotivated whenever people say, I don't understand you what you are saying. Therefore, it is the first thing that one has to have proper foundation, or the basic thing for practicing pronunciation or sounds. Here, as I have already told you, vowels and consonant sounds, we need to practice and make our organs of speech, for example, teeth and tongue, vocal cords. We've got alveolar, wreath there, nasal cavity. So there are different organs of speech to produce the sounds. We have to master these sounds. We have to practice these sounds with the help of different organs of speech. Then only we can automatically or easily produce these sounds. Thank you very much. See you again in next video.